Hey, welcome to the Spark of Madness. I'm Matt. This is Ben. This is Aaron over here.
Hey, that is me.
We're back after a week hiatus. Ben had a conflict last week, so we're catching up. We're going to review a handful of movies, actually.
He had to get the 12-piece chicken, creep.
Really one movie that we're reviewing.
Yeah, pretty much
Right,
one.
yeah. I guess I'd be curious to hear about some of the, especially, I watched so basically we're doing RoboCop, if it's not obvious.
Yeah.
RoboCop, which I know, Aaron, you've pushed for a little while, and Ben backed it up quite a bit. So what I want to do is start with the original. I'd love for you guys to fill me in on what happened in the sequels, and then kind of tie it together with the new one, and then we can talk a little bit more about it at a high level.
The way to look at this is very important. What you got to know is there's one movie, and then there's a few vignettes from the others that are worth talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into it, but I can't imagine they recapture the same kind of satirical tone from the first one and the other. Like, I don't know how you could.
The second one they kind of do, but
the second one tries, as does the remake.
The second one they do, it's more mean.
Yeah. And then the remake does a more modern take on it, and it's relevant, but it's not that great. It's
the second one. Yeah. The second one's actually more goofy.
Yeah.
It feels more goofy. This one has more, like, they balance the seriousness, and this one's like this a really nice layered cake. You know, it's it's a good movie. It's a complete movie.
Yeah, it's really. I'm really looking forward, because we do these in. We record these in advance, and I've been putting in clips. I can't wait to source all the clips for this one. In case you haven't seen RoboCop, I want to run through the 3-sentence Google description, just so you're kind of aware.
In case you haven't seen it, what are you doing?
In a violent near-apocalyptic Detroit, evil corporation Omni Consumer Products wins a contract with the city government to privatize the police force. To test their crime-eradicating cyborgs, the company leads street cop Alex Murphy, played by Peter Weller, into an armed confrontation with crime lord Boddicker, Kurtwood Smith, so they can use his body to support their untested RoboCop prototype. But when the RoboCop learns of the company's nefarious plans, he turns on his masters. This is from 1987 and directed by Paul Verhoeven, who did
Starship Troopers.
Hollow Man. Which we did a couple. Yeah, we're gonna do Starship Troopers next week, right?
Yeah,
I think that's what we talked about. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Looking forward to it.
So RoboCop, 1987.
The similarity, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
What for you guys? Because I've seen like the compilation of scenes before now, but this was my first go all the way through from start to finish consistently. So, but how do you guys regard RoboCop? I guess in general.
So for me, there's. Out of all and I've seen all the RoboCops. To me, there is like four or five different phases, and I've seen them more than 4 or 5 times. But 4 or 5 different phases in my life where I've seen these, and as I seen them, I look upon it differently. And as an adult, I realize how amazing this movie is. Early on, you're like, oh, it's just graphic and kind of cool, and you know, like, that's kind of goofy, that stuff that comes in the commercials and stuff.
Shot that guy's crotch.
And even the second one too, you know. And then you realize, okay, this is not a kids movie. It's not a kids movie.
Nope.
They try to market it as kids movies, but it's super smart. It's super, like, it takes itself seriously.
For the most part, yes. I mean, there's a little bit of humor here and there, but it's not at the expense of the narrative.
No, it's not tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
It's part of the narrative.
There aren't too many camera winks that I can recall.
The second one is more tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
I ended up kind of in my head finding similar, mostly from the tone standpoint, which I think gets to what you're talking about, Ben, having some of the same kind of angles as like V for Vendetta. Like, it's taking it very seriously, even if it's presented kind of as, you know, maybe kids love it because it's superhero. Look, he's throwing knives or whatever. But there's like a pretty serious core behind it, which RoboCop obviously uses at times through humor or other things with those commercials. I loved the Nukem
the Nukem
board game.
It's in a battleship, it's Nukem.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought those like little cutaways were really good to kind
I'll
of.
buy that for $1.
An
That's a
enduring
funny
catchphrase.
character. A friend of mine who I worked for always said that.
Yeah,
line.
my dad says it too.
I'll buy that for $1.
He said it to me as early as like 3 days ago. So it's an enduring line.
It is good.
And as Ben has gotten to, Matt, to put it simply, RoboCop is like ogres, and ogres have layers.
And layers.
Yeah, it has many angles to approach it from, and I always feel stupid saying it has something for everyone, but it kind of really does.
Well, let's kind of peel the onion, I guess,
Okay.
just to kind of hit some of those things we're talking about, especially for people who haven't seen the movie. But like, let's start on the surface and just like the general idea of this guy gets, even from a plot standpoint, and then what happens in his cool suit or whatever. So he gets blown up trying to track down Red Foreman from That 70s Show.
Can you fly, Bobby?
He's also the president, alien president in Star Trek 6 too. So, but we'll continue.
Oh yeah.
I got some like heavy like Bill Hader vibe from him in this movie. Like I felt like it was Bill Hader. If you did one of those like face swap things, if you like.
Or did Bill Hader give us Red Foreman vibes?
He played a good villain.
Maybe.
You know, it's funny that you say that, Matt. When you watch I watched that before That 70s Show, and I never associated that guy with That 70s Show until I watched That 70s Show. So, he played a good villain, but now, like, because of this, he's tainted because of That 70s Show.
So sad.
Which is funny.
He does a pretty good job. So he runs kind of like a crime syndicate within this dystopian.
I'd say he does more than just pretty good. I'd say he's very good. He's believable in that he's not too much of a mustache twirler, but he's clearly insane and will do whatever it takes. Because he's not portrayed too over the top, but he still pushes the envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and the way he performs it, not to jump ahead, it kind of sets up, like, he does a good job of, like, he's not just a chaotic criminal mastermind. He is the type of person, and it's evidence up until like in the scenes preceding when we reveal that he's kind of in cahoots with the corporation, and so he has that like level of strategy, I guess, to think through it that way. But so Peter Weller, I'm just going to start with the scene where he's tracking them down, and he gets blown up.
I think that's putting it lightly.
Yeah,
I do. I think I watched the director's cut of that.
There's a little more gore in the director's cut.
Did it shoot off his hand in the regular cut?
I forget the differences. All I know is that it was cut to not get an X rating.
It was pretty gory. The director's.
I think I saw the one you watched, or you're referring to, Ben, where he blows off his hand and stuff.
I think that's in the original too. I don't remember, because they said they wanted to salvage his hand. And he goes, "Oh, get rid of it."
No matter which cut you watch, it's brutal. It's hard to watch.
There's like a lot of I wouldn't say necessarily body horror, but like there's a lot of like slowly disintegrating body parts that like get shot off, or
it doesn't
the worst
pull
one
the punches.
is the guy crashing into the toxic waste.
Oh, that one's tame by comparison to getting your hand blown off. Yeah. It's almost comical. It's like it's hard for me to take that seriously, but it still works in the context.
Yeah, I mean, it sets up very much the reason why they need to, like, it's presenting a world where you would need this type of technology, like where you can get on board with it. Where you can get on board with even the what is it, the ED 209?
Well, I would never be on board with the ED 209s. They are clearly defective.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't even walk downstairs.
Yeah.
That's funny. That is so good.
And then in the beginning of RoboCop 2, they're still not working, and they show him trying to climb out of like a pothole in the road, and it can't do it. And they're like, "We're rolling them out anyway."
It's like they didn't think through the like BB-8 like R2D2 thing where he needs to,
they need
like,
the
move
jetpack
a little bit more dexterously. Yeah. Yeah.
On the subject
he becomes RoboCop, and they kind of put him back together. And I really like that scene where we're seeing it from his view and what they're
Time
as they're
lapse.
kind of booting him up.
That is so brilliant filmmaking.
Yeah.
I was watching that today, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" You know, that is so. But now they would show everything, but like that, to keep the point of view. It's also kind of like they're trying to figure out what death, what the brink of death would be like.
Yeah.
You mean? To keep the point of view of him right after he gets shot, and they're making him. One, it's a good way to not show all that crap, budget wise. And two, your imagination fills the rest. But three, it's just like it's so clever. It's so good. Good filmmaking.
You do so much with so little.
The exposition is really good here.
Was this the one where they did? Are you still referencing Are you referencing the whole movie, Ben, or just this kind of?
No, this
period?
that sequence.
They
where
do it pretty
he is-
consistently through the movie, but this sequence in particular.
Yeah.
Right before he becomes RoboCop, when they're making him RoboCop.
I
I
think
like that
one
they
of-
don't show it.
One of the
And
best
I like,
things.
and also, man, I like how the subtlety when they show him when he's walking in the monitor. You mean like practical filmmaking? So it's clever.
Yeah,
it's still cool.
Yeah.
I thought this. I agree with you guys. I actually feel like this sequence was one of the, maybe not the most memorable, but one of the most integral parts that they needed to get, because they started it with, so he's recovering, right? You feel like, they're just going to put him back together. And they kind of did this with the 2014 one, where it's just, he has all of his memories for the most part. He wakes up and he's the same person, he has to confront right away that he's a cyborg. And that's a different angle because it's about it's putting it more personal story. Yeah. This was, and they started with a cool shot of that like pull back from the cul-de-sac with his family.
Yeah.
And it's like him like getting removed from that.
Memories before he dies. One line he says like, I can feel them, but I don't remember them. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like the humanity of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Him
That's
finding
deep,
his humanity, and then he finds it at the end.
Yep.
It's just there's something beautiful about it,
Well, and it shows too, like this scene I feel like really ties together, and it starts you thinking through, like, as they keep peppering you with these fun little corporate references, the Duke Nukem game, the Nukem game, but they start you down this path where you're just like, you're pulling out for this one individual person that is just strictly being used for a certain mission, and he's completely being stripped of that. Even though you set up before like a very real reason why you could use this type of technology, right? Like they did a really good job shifting your attention away from, I guess, towards the corporate, the satire angle at this moment in the movie, which I thought was really good.
Yeah.
Well, what's nice about the satire angle too? Yeah, you mean like the juggling of it, where it's like it's still funny, but we still got a little level of seriousness to it.
Well, I guess I just mean it's kind of like they're very much aware of like superhero robot that fights this very black and white type of situation of crime fighting. Like, here's the villain and we need to eradicate it. We need to like do something about this like very obviously real problem that we've presented to you. But the whole time they're kind of setting the stage that this person's being used like in other ways, or is being like controlled to not like get the full picture.
There's a force directive that nobody knows about. Like they lay in clues without spoon feeding to like mother.
We're still hurting. We're still hurting about that movie 3 years later.
Also, what's nice too is the world building. You know what I mean? Along with the satire, they had the news reports and the satire itself, which is the satire. They show you what's going on in the world. So there's. It's not so central on RoboCop, but but it's also funny too at the same time. Like the laser beam that goes off on accident, you know what I mean? Things like that,
Normally we would crap on movies giving exposition and stuff through newscasts, but it is entirely apt in this situation because it's showing that sort of world where everything is that.
And he does the same thing in Starship Troopers. He does the same. Starship Troopers. When I watched Starship Troopers, when I first saw this reminds me of RoboCop.
Would you like to know more?
it's the same guy.
Well, and I think I feel like the prime directives are. I
Paul
mean,
Verhoeven.
they're. I'm not looking at it. What do you say, Ben?
I said Paul Verhoeven. This is director.
I thought you said hold
Paulie.
on.
No,
Hold
no.
on. I think the big thing for me was the prime directive stuff because the first three are so like idealistic and respectable, like serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law. Like, yes, but then there's this mysterious fourth one that he can't even know.
And even the
And
guy
then-
who created him didn't know or funded him.
And we
Yeah.
get all of these newscasts of these horrible things happening, and yet this is presented as the solution to the problem. But the people who like the bigger picture that could be solving the newscasts are focused on this like robot service cop that are pushing the focus away from them, which I think is, the movie takes a big shift, like kind of 3/4 of the way in, which I thought was really great, especially when his mask is removed symbolically to kind of show that he's, kind of seeing more clearly, I guess.
So if you break down the story, and someone else has broke this down too, and they're right, and the music kind of backs it up with it, which is the score is one of the most amazing scores, best theme, one of the best themes ever written. It's a Western. It's basically a redemption. He's a Western. You know what I mean? And if you listen to the main theme, it sounds like a Western. You mean combined with technology? You mean the
Little metal
composer of
crashing
that-
sounds, I think I remember.
Well, it's anvils.
Yeah.
And he composed, what's his name? Basil Polidorus. Died in 2006. But he did Conan, which was awesome. Remember?
Conan.
He did The Hunt for Red October. He did a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
But he's very underrated. And when you listen to this theme compared to the RoboCop 2 theme, the RoboCop 2 theme is so underwhelming compared to
I couldn't even hum it for you.
there's also the theme is the human, the passion, and also the metal. You mean it's RoboCop. You mean, so you can feel like the agony in it.
Yeah.
You mean it's not like a Superman theme where it's dun da da da.
Superman kind of has
coming
a
to save
couple
the day.
of
It's like-
notes.
It's the agony of it. You mean it's the agony, the agony of that character.
Yeah.
I think that's a great. I think the perfect way to frame up the underlying theme. I hadn't considered it as a Western, but now that you mention it, I do. There's a lot of that to this, and I like that it's kind of a futuristic take on it. But
You had
the
the showdown, the villains. You mean
Yeah.
the two villains? They create great villains.
They really
the
do.
sub villain, and the main villain, and that's good storytelling because the main villain's kind of like,
And-
the Emperor, and Darth Vader is kind of like, that '70s show guy.
Well,
Whereas-
another thing about, to Star Wars too, when you were even comparing to Star Wars, there's this idea of, I think there's some Western. To me, I was thinking about too, when I think about a Western, there's also the environment and the setting and the time. Like you're very much aware of those things. Where that I feel like that played into RoboCop too, where kind of accounting for all of that.
Apparently, Paul Verhoeven, when he got the script to this, because he's a director, he threw it in the trash. He didn't want to read it. Like, RoboCop, and like
What
this
a
is
load.
stupid. Yeah, this is stupid. A robotic cop. This is stupid. And his wife read it and said, "Hey, there's some really great themes in here," and convinced him to do it. And he read it and he saw and there are some good themes. So it's like it's under the guise of this.
It's
And
a
it
stealth
worked.
good movie.
It's a well-written movie.
Yeah.
They created really good setups. They really created good villains. There's not stupid exposition. They took their time with things. Like I was watching it and I see some flaws because there's this one beautiful shot and I watch it over and over again. But of course you scrutinize it, you can see some flaws. But the shot in the boardroom when they do the long take with the tracking shot of everybody and it pans to the Delta City when they talk about Delta City. You know what I mean? If you look real closely in the reflection of the TVs in the background, like they have the whole rows of TVs, you can see the crew like in their reflection. You know what I mean? Very, very. But I love that. I don't care.
You're just being a nitpicker.
But the time they took to plan that shot was beautiful. Even though like they couldn't get around the reflection, now they would just digitally remove it. But like, I love that setup. It was all in one take. They entered the boardroom. They set up the whole situation of who to fear. You mean the main bad guy, and everybody is, and just by play, like it's just that's kind of an Orson Welles kind of shot where there's so much blocking and camera blocking involved that informational, like that's a film's that's like a film class.
It loads your brain up with everything it needs in that short span,
and you know everything. There's so much thought in that. There's so much thought in these movies. There's so much thought in the 80s and 90s and like early 90s
because they didn't have a choice.
Well, yeah, they thought it out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you could just see it now. The reflection.
Who cares?
That kind of sucks. But but who cares? You mean it's so good of a shot? It sets it up. I would use it too.
Then if in a movie these days we saw reflections on like a TV screen, you'd be like, this movie sucks.
I mean, even Better Call Saul. Like there was one shot where it's like he's supposed to be isolated in an office by himself, like an empty office, and you see the crew in there. You mean in the reflection? But I forgive it because they do so much filmmaking in it.
Yeah.
Oh. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was just gonna say, my main introduction to RoboCop was on the Nintendo. Because there was a god-awful RoboCop game for the Nintendo in 89, I think. And I didn't see the movie until a few years later, and I was like, this movie's way better than this game. It's really good. Yeah.
I think I saw the tamed version when it was on TV.
You mean the Your Mom version?
No, but when it was on like network type TV.
Okay.
Because they had to cut everything out. Like it's like...
How much of the movie was left?
Like a flash of RoboCop, and that was it.
Freeze! Roll credits. They change all his dialogue. Come along quietly, or there will be cupcakes, and his mouth doesn't match it at all.
No, this movie's pretty solid. I think it's well written, well directed. It's just like, so they I mean, someone said that there's some symbolism of him in the story arc where he kind of rises again. He falls, he dies.
Yeah.
And he rises. He rises again, like Jesus. There's some Jesus symbolism, and it shows the part when he's like on the water, like at the end when he's the showdown. He's basically walking on water. So there's
man.
Yeah, I mean, but it's clear now that you think about it. That's not a film class shit. Like that's a little bit of director doing that. It's a cool element.
Yeah, so long as it's not foisted on you, I think it works.
No, yeah, it's not Superman Returns and he falls down like Jesus.
I think they were a little worse about it in Man of Steel, where he's in the cathedral with all the iconography behind him.
Yeah, come on, geez.
we know you're better than this, Snyder.
Here comes the airplane.
Okay.
Went up wide.
So RoboCop 2 was more of a popcorn movie, and it's worth watching, but it doesn't have any of the heart and soul. And Irvin Kershner's a great director. He's probably
the best director of sequels.
He's probably who kept the movie on its feet.
It is, yeah.
But I think that the remake is the only other one that's really worth giving some thought to, and it was worth watching. The remake
wasn't bad. It's different.
Yeah, it's different, but it kept the core of the ideas.
It's not bad. It's just not great.
There's parts of it that are great.
They shifted the focus to like be way more of kind of maybe not a Black Mirror angle, but it's kind of like, oh well, what's the terror of this guy realizing he's a cyborg and then completely losing control over himself.
They wanted to give it a more Blade Runner angle.
Yeah, and I did like. I really liked. I texted you guys. It's like Samuel L. Jackson's in this.
Yeah, he's in it for a whole 2 seconds.
They kind of like compressed like all of the like peppered in newscasts that they did in the original into these big like Sam Jackson talk shows where he's like he has a very slanted opinion. And he brought. I mean, he kind of. It was a much more focused, like, here is the theme of the movie. But I kind of liked how they compared it to drones and the morality of stuff like that, and they presented it via this RoboCop story, and then they tied it together at the very end. I thought that was interesting and a good way to go about it. It doesn't hit as hard as the original.
I would say that the remake has a couple of faults, a couple of critical missteps that, if rectified, it'd be a pretty decent movie. One, the main guy they picked to play RoboCop is a plank. He's
pretty boring.
He's pretty boring, and I don't. He's
gotten a lot of work though.
I don't see any conviction in his eyes.
Yeah.
He's too robotic, if you'll excuse the terminology. And what was the other one? Gosh, I almost had it. Somebody fill in for me while I recalibrate my robo brain. It's because they killed him in a really dumb way. The bomb planted in his car, like it lacks all of the shock of the other death.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But would it have been good to just completely do it again? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. One thing we haven't talked about, so we talked a little bit about some of the plot moments, I guess, but we've kind of not mentioned some of the like big wow scenes. The one that I want to talk about was the one that came to mind for me was kind of the big showdown at the end, which we were just
of the original RoboCop.
Original, yes. And I just had in my note, a lot of bodies here at the end. And, and the toxic waste one was like,
pretty metal.
A perfect. Yeah. I thought it was a perfect like moment in like, this criminal, is abused and used in this very particular way by this bigger entity that, in they're scrambling to figure things out, and the RoboCop has come back from,
we killed you,
his wilderness, and he gets mutated in toxic waste, and then gets run over by his own boss and just like explodes.
Serves you right for having such a stupid haircut, creep.
Yeah, that was the big one that was the big that was one of the big wow scenes for me.
Too many trans fats.
Have you tried Atkins?
I'm on a carnivore diet.
Try the new Robo Paste diet, approved by all Robos nationwide.
That poop Play-Doh.
It was like baby food.
Sure, yeah.
That's what they said it tasted like anyway. Now, the other big wow scene is in the remake where they do the pull away, where they show Robo's just head and spinal column and lungs and hand. They kept the hand in that one. That was a neat little nod.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say and I totally agree. I thought that was a pretty cool sequence.
It doesn't have the biggest sort of wow factor, but it's definitely worth a watch.
I mean, to me, I got just as much out of seeing Peter Weller RoboCop with his helmet off.
Right.
I got just as much just in
probably
that
way
more.
more.
See.
Yeah. The prosthetics on Peter Weller are still out of this world. Amazing.
Very good.
It took me forever to figure out the logistics of that.
Well, and I also think there's an underrated quality to how, not just when he had his helmet off, because especially so, the way he portrayed just this blank kind of expression, but just all the way through, I think it's underrated how good of a job he did to just, even in his movements, to reinforce just not just that he's a robot, but that he's a person in there that has been completely stripped of.
I think Weller's underrated as a whole. Everything I've seen him do, it comes across as genuine. He feels like a real person on screen. I don't have to think. Like it's kind of like when you're watching Tom Cruise. Yeah, he's a great actor, but it's clear he's portraying, because he's playing it up for the movie. That's what we're conditioned to want. When you should want the realness of a Weller performance.
The realness of a Weller.
The realness.
we were joking beforehand, but there is a scene where like almost they give us a couple action sequences where they show us how cool his skills are, his RoboCop skills, and he sees somebody. What is she? It's a woman about to get raped, right? On the top of a, and he
he motion tracks the guy's crotch through her dress and shoots him. And then I told you that there was a video out there on the internet. Some fans made a video where it's an extended cut where 30 guys get shot in the crotch, and it's graphic, but it is hilarious. Go find it. Go ahead.
You showed me that years ago, Aaron. Now that I'm thinking about it,
just the logistics of it. Now, we would be completely out of line if we did not mention the visual effects in RoboCop, because not only was the movie making as a whole amazing, but the visual effects were amazing too. It's one of the last movies to use Phil Tippett's go motion technique. It's stop action with motion blur. It's amazing. Ben, I assume you know the inner workings of go motion.
Did he shake the camera? Did he shake it, or
as I understand it from
forget the technique.
Well, the technique is still stop action, but as I understand it, the models are on little motorized rigs where you can have the object move while the camera's exposing, so you can get your motion blur.
So it moves a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. And the result is very good. Jurassic Park almost used the same technique.
I would, but there's part of me who just wants to see what Jurassic Park would have looked like.
I mean, you've watched the making of Jurassic Park, right?
Mm-hmm.
They show a few snippets of it.
It's not bad. It's still stop motion.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's amazing, but the computer stuff they were doing in Jurassic Park was pretty superior, I would say.
Yes, it is.
The stuff in Jurassic Park has all the heart and soul of the go motion, but on the computer. So
you know why? Because his animators, they rigged the animators to do it.
Yeah,
they had the people who understood
they had the stop motion animators with little rigs to talk to the computer with little stop motion sort of tools, and by God, it worked. Somebody get Marvel to get those animators in.
He's a genius.
Yeah,
he's an interesting guy. He's kind of a little loopy.
Sometimes you need a loopy guy to get the job done.
Yeah.
I mean, who do you think is your producer? Or at least was before the COVID days.
Not I, said the pig.
So, anything else we've kind of not hit it yet before we, I guess, whether we want to rate the movie or not, I'm open to whatever you guys want to do in terms of discussing all of them. But anything before we kind of wrap up, any like specific scenes or, sequences we haven't talked about yet?
I really like,
I like the guy who plays. Go ahead, Aaron.
Ah, the joys of telecommunication. It's my turn. I have the conch. I like the scene in the remake where they're testing out Robo in the tactical situation, and Jackie Earle Haley, I forget his character's name, he has them play "If I Only Had a Heart." That's
good.
That was cute.
Yeah. Did you know that the original version of that, who's going to play the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, was Buddy Epson?
Yep.
And when a man's an empty kettle, it could be sentimental. Da-dun, da-dun, da-dun.
Yeah. He did not come on back now.
You know, I'd be thinking another Lincoln if I only had a heart.
Yeah, I kind of like the guy they ended up with.
I did too.
Yeah.
Also, there was a good exposition in that sequence where he was explaining how he doesn't have any choice, why he's doing it. Like that was realistic of like how like when Commissioner Gordon was explaining why he's so good. But like that's the use of good exposition, because you would explain that to somebody.
And to a degree, he's right. To a degree, that's scientifically accurate to how we operate too. Our brain will do the action, and it will come up with a rationalization of why afterward.
Yeah. But what's good about it is he's explaining it to the audience in a very good way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I like the guy. I like the. I don't know, but I really felt, even though he's kind of a jerk, the executive that got killed by the the main bad guy,
Mhm.
I thought he was well casted.
In the
Mhm.
original or the
His
remake?
setup, his demise in the original.
Ah, yes.
The
You
more,
mean-
more the guy who is responsible for the RoboCop, specifically that kind of swooped
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, he's also in the old Disney movie Blank Check. He was the bad guy in Blank Check.
Oh
if you
man, I
guys
haven't
remember.
seen Blank Check since I was in like middle school, dude.
Yeah.
It wasn't very good.
So
Yeah.
here, so the guy who played the bad guy, the main bad guy, the executive bad guy with the really long arms at the end when he falls, because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
stop motion looked really bad. Right there, it was like a Tim Burton movie. He also played in an episode of Star Trek as the main captain that took over Picard. So both the bad guys are in Star Trek lore.
By God, what does this mean?
It means there's not a lot of actors out there. Apparently.
Oh man,
He's good. He was good. He was a good villain. Very good.
I
villain.
thought, yeah, that was kind of going to be my last thing was so Directive 4, which if you haven't seen the movie, we haven't explicitly said, is that they can't harm create any employee
their corporate
of the big
overlord,
corporation.
Senior
Yeah.
execs.
They're like literally unable to do it. And what I liked about this movie, which the 2014 version just completely
it doesn't
like,
gloss
jumped over
over it. It does it just very nonchalantly.
They kind of are like, oh, his love and memory and all of this overcame his own reprogramming, and he
Yeah, it's pretty
was able
stupid.
to shoot them. Which I mean, it's just different. I liked in this case that he was so, and it reinforced the previous whole movie that you just watched, that he was kind of this tool in the moment. But what ultimately won out was somebody else realizing, oh, we fire this guy so he can shoot him.
Right.
Like it becomes this, and this is what I think is so great about the movie, is that the whole time we're basically, the whole story is this idea that this cop who's part of this group that by all accounts they're even about trying to go on strike themselves because they feel as a group mistreated within this dystopian world.
Yeah, they cut up our pay by 40%.
Yeah. Yeah, they had that that initial scene with the group. But they were presented with this guy who wants to he just joined the force as he's following the absolute code that cops should and the police are supposed to be following. And then he's just completely from then on just mutilated and repurposed and dehumanized into this thing that is protecting entirely the wrong people in a world where they even tell us there's poverty and all this stuff, and we keep pumped in with these commercials, right? To remind us of that fact that the world is screwed up. But hey, look over here. What I love so much is that they kind of highlighted the big systemic stuff, and then in the end,
even
basically
in the first and in the remake, they cover police corruption too, and that's pretty good.
Yeah,
like because that needs to be touched on.
They show the kind of range of like how it gets so complicated and at the bigger level is like kind of the puppet masters to an extent in this case. And I liked that they arrived at a scenario where other people realize that too. I kind of liked that somebody else is like, this guy's fired because he's corrupted. That's how the movie ends.
Oh man, can we give a special shout out since we have gone this far without talking about Michael Keaton as the bad dude in the remake. He's great.
Oh yeah.
Michael Keaton is amazing at everything he does.
Yeah, he's good.
We should review Multiplicity someday.
It's a good movie.
I've never seen that.
It's worth a watch.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I just had like two bullet points from my notes of the 2014 one that said "Ugh" becomes a video game. Ugh, like so many heads-up displays. Like the other one is good. I do think it's good. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say a 5, but it was better than I thought it would
I'd
be.
give it a 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's close. It's close for me. The new one?
It's entertaining. Yeah, it's a 6. It's entertaining.
Yeah, it's only brought down by its cast, mainly the main guy.
RoboCop 3 is the worst one.
Oh God.
And he gets a jetpack though.
Yeah, he gets a jetpack, but he's MIA for the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and then there's a ninja robot.
Yeah,
that he
that's
has
that's
to
a thing
fight.
that happened.
And Rick, is it Rick Torm? Is that how you say his name?
Probably.
Rick Torn. You can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Yeah.
That guy. He plays the OCP is going down, so they're kind of merging with China or Japan company, and it's not Peter Weller,
Yeah.
someone else, and yeah, it kind of sucks.
That was another problem with RoboCop 2.
There's a good character named Daggett who plays. He's a British guy who sounds exactly like Claude Rains from Invisible Man. he's a good villain. He plays it. That's only.
I just realized it, Ben. RoboCop disappears from RoboCop 2 for like 20 minutes as well, near in the middle where they're doing the Kane stuff. Because this is like right after he frees himself from his programming, and then they just forget about him for a while, and it annoyed me. But I digress.
So you guys want to rate the movie?
Yeah, let's rate the movie.
Yeah, if you guys want
Let's do
to
it.
say something for the other movies, but who wants to go first?
I'll go first. RoboCop the first, 8 out of 10. It's very, very ridiculously solid, almost as if it were made of metal. RoboCop 2, I give a 5. RoboCop 3, I give a 2. And the remake, I also give a...
What'd you get, RoboCop? I wasn't listening.
RoboCop
8.
RoboCop 1, 8, 2, 5, 3, 2, and then remake 5.
Yep.
All right, I'll give it a 9. RoboCop 1.
Yeah.
RoboCop 2 is 7. Maybe an 8. 7. It's good. But they made RoboCop more blue than gray.
It was a little jarring.
Yeah. It was cool.
To me, it made him look a little cheap, but it works.
The stop motion's superior in it with Kane, the
so
bad
good.
robot. RoboCop 3, 2.
Yeah, we agree on that.
RoboCop the series that we didn't touch upon,
Did we really need to?
1. I don't even remember it. You know, RoboCop, the new one, probably a 6.
Oh, and RoboCop for Nintendo, 4 out of 10.
I'll throw a video game review for this one.
It's not good. RoboCop can't even jump.
What was your series rating, Ben? 1?
1, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is a thing
1.
that happened.
The fact that they made it was great.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But someone made a good point on a review I watched, saying like you can only make one movie out of it.
Yeah, it's
it's a satire and also a reflection.
It doesn't have the legs for a series.
No.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like Beetlejuice, which also has Michael Keaton.
Mm-hmm. So I waffled a little between a 7 and an 8. I gave RoboCop an 8, the original.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of skipped over. There are a couple kind of slower-ish moments that aren't bad. They're not bad, and they don't distract from anything. Just from a tightness of everything.
The movie's barely an hour 45, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty much forgivable. I do think, and some of this is I thought the Ed not being able to walk down the stairs.
It's both stupid and cool at the same time.
It was funny without it was distractingly funny, but then they get back on track. But
yeah.
I think the best parts of the whole movie, as we've talked about, are kind of this. They use we haven't really talked about consumerism, but just this idea of the media being this opiate of the masses type thing of where you're lulled into just watching the thing, and there's all these fun little commercials, but you're completely ignoring just how corrupt everything else is. And then we go to this story that is so integrated into a very narrow lane of how people are abusing this, and
how far off from the truth is it? Not very, I would say.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty I mean, it's interesting that we're doing a movie RoboCop during what's happening right now, but I do think, just to focus on the movie though, that it's a pretty like clever way to approach this, especially for the time period, which I would say like this 80s boom of these very creative properties, to then take this angle with it. I think was such a bold choice I mean, it's a brilliantly written movie.
Oh yeah.
That
And brilliantly
weave it-
directed too.
yeah,
It's
to
a
weave
combination.
to dare to weave in all of this when it's and then to see how the property gets used. It's like, oh, it's a video game. Oh, look, it's a McDonald's
Yeah.
toy.
They
It's like,
packaged it,
I
and
mean,
slapped it on a
Which is
plastic lunchbox, and they want to sell it.
See,
it
the
predicted
direct-
itself. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Well, the director was probably given a good fu to probably the people producing it, and that's probably why he wasn't hired again.
He didn't
You
do the
mean-
second one because he didn't like the script.
He didn't like the script.
Yeah, he had a different
But-
idea.
But you can tell it's like tongue in cheek. He's like, I know they're gonna make toys out of this, but I'm gonna make it feel that they can't make toys out of it. I mean, like this, like it's like,
I'm gonna shoot this
questioning.
guy in the crotch. Say bye-bye to that toy deal.
well, it's like rated R. I mean, like it's like, and that's what the biggest complaint about the new one is. Like people wish it was rated R.
Mhm.
You know, they wish it was
It's a
more
little bit more
adult.
sterilized. It's
It
a much
is.
more sterilized version.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily
Like,
need all that gore to get the point across, but it would have been
No.
nice.
No, but like for the fandom, like there's a big cult following
Oh,
fandom
yeah.
that love that gore.
Well, there's an immediate difference in. I think the easiest kind of distinction for me is, okay, our first go with RoboCop is him going out into the world and just immediately like following a pretty brutal like, oh, I'm dead scene, which, you know, he's literally blown apart, compared to the 2014 where we don't even see him. He
Yeah,
just
it's-
kind of gets evaporated in a explosion cloud. We don't
Yeah.
see anything.
I thought the
to-
choice to leave his hand was a stupid choice, but go on.
It was
Yeah.
in direct, like it was a direct nod to the first movie.
a
That's all it
callback.
was.
Original,
yeah.
to do the opposite.
Yeah.
But I do think that the worst comparison of the two was that, so he goes out into the world and is like fighting bad guys. In the new one, he's in a simulation to start off, and it's like we don't need like a training montage of his brain. Like that's not interesting. There's no risk. There's no
Well,
stakes in that.
It
way.
comes off of the heels of the Batman.
Well, it also comes off the
Begins.
heels of focus
Sure.
group testing, and they would not
Yeah,
put him out
sure.
there without focus group.
Yeah,
So-
that's a good point too.
That's
Well,
the whole
I'm-
reason they
after
made his
watch-
suit tactical.
Yeah, in the '80s,
Tactical, yeah.
in the '80s there was no standard. Like there was no.
Focus groups existed then.
Yeah, but like a little more lawless in terms of
Yeah.
the product being on the market.
It was the
You
Wild
know?
West.
Like like they had a 209.
You got that right.
It'd be funny if he could somehow, like, if he ended up tapping into like everybody's cell phone signal to sonar in on whomever. It's just complete rip off of.
You
all
just
the
got to
other
do this
Batman
once,
shit.
okay?
I kill those people.
God, the Dark Knight is stupid sometimes.
Well, after doing Hollow Man and this, I'm totally on board with Starship Troopers next week. So
Starship
which I have
Troopers
not
is
seen.
it's
I have
a
not
tough-
seen.
It's the same. Like it's
hard to
different.
tell which is better.
RoboCop.
Probably RoboCop, but it's
Well,
still
we'll see.
a
We'll
good
see.
But I tell you
contender.
what, we'll get into it. But the special effects like they use some models still.
Yeah.
The special effects are outstanding, and Phil Tippett was involved in that too. Like helping create the creature designs.
Yeah, it
and
was for the
animating.
year it was done. It was pretty impressive, and some of it still holds up.
Yeah.
Well, I guess and it's on Netflix, right? Starship Troopers.
Is it? I don't know.
I don't know. We'll
I
find
think
out.
Find out.
But I wish it was on Tubi.
Yeah,
That's
come
my
on,
preferred-
Tubi. Where's your game at?
To be the impossible to be. To be the untubulous thing. It's no Netflix or Hulu or Spotify.
Yeah, can you put like a disco ball sort of thing going around Ben when he's doing that?
This is my quest to watch Tubi now.
Sponsored by
to march
Tubi.
into
Not really.
hell with the heavenly curse.
I think we've already cut.